Good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Perry.
And I'm your host, David. Today we're talking about Season 4, Episode 14, Return to Grace. Before we continue, you can find us on Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube as The Fire Caves, a Star Trek Deep Space Nine podcast.
That is correct. And as I say every single week, you should find us and follow us because we are awesome. I actually really enjoy doing the show and some other things that are obviously Trek related that we get to incorporate into this, and then sci-fi related, of course. Just go ahead and give us a shout out whenever you can. Follow along. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, of course, please send them our way. We would love to hear from you. But tonight we will be talking about the 14th episode of the fourth season, which is Return to Grace, as David has already said. Very interesting episode for a lot of different reasons here, and we're going to get into all that. But before we do, there are a couple of things I did want to talk about. And of course, as always, we have to check in with each other. So, David, how was your week?
It was fine. Work is weird. It's been slow for me. Been hard for me to close down any real important sales for a couple weeks. And I was off the last 2 days. I worked today because I was off. Yesterday, my coworker did $15,000 in business on my day off. I come back and I see that and I'm like, man, come on now. What happened? Wow. Turns out he had some customer who apparently had already been in the store on some other day that he was there. When I was talking with him, he was saying he had talked to the guy before, but the guy dropped $10,000 or something on his own sale, and then so the rest of it was other things that added up to about $15,000 all told. And for the record, anyone in the mattress industry, I mean, $10,000 on a sale is a lot. So to have $15,000 for the day is a really good day. I'm the store manager, so if the store manages the bonus, I'll get a bonus. But I don't think the store will still even make the bonus, which is unfortunate. It's just been a rough month. Month of June was pretty rough. But otherwise, I did finally finish a book I'd been reading called The Great Debate, which is a comparison of Paine, Thomas Paine, and Edmund Burke. They're two philosophers around the turn of the 17th century. Is that how that works? No, 18th century, around the American Revolutionary War. I've spent a lot, the last year, reading both of their philosophies, and so it was great to finally read a book that compared their philosophies together. I was taking notes, a lot, a ton of notes. And meanwhile, at the same time, I was playing the new Legend of Zelda game. So I was reading the book, and then I was playing Legend of Zelda, and I finally finished that last week. So I got a chance to finish the book this week. I had already started reading book 2 of the Altered Carbon book series. And so I'm in the middle of the second one. I'd already started it. So I know you had said that you're in the middle of the Expanse book, and maybe I should start reading this week. I'm going to wait to finish reading the Altered Carbon book first and then read the Expanse book.
That's fine. Gives me more time. Gives me more time to get ahead of you because, exactly. I certainly do try. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is the show Silo. I think I've mentioned it already. Mm-hmm. It is based on a book. I'll read that after reading the Expanse book. The show just had its last episode. It's Apple TV show. Last episode this week. Really enjoyed the first season. Looking forward to more. It's based on a trilogy of books, so I don't know where the books fall in that, the timeline of the show. But really enjoyed the show. Has Rebecca Ferguson, I believe that's her name, as the main actress. She's the one in the Mission Impossible series lately. Speaking of which, looking forward to seeing that when that comes out, because I've been doing a marathon of each Mission Impossible movie.
Okay.
Watch the 5th one.
I was gonna ask you.
Yeah.
Were you watching them on Paramount Plus?
No. Are they on Paramount Plus?
All of them are on Paramount Plus, and we're going to get into that.
Well, that makes sense.
I'd actually planned on us talking about that tonight for a particular reason.
Interesting. I should have realized that, because I went ahead and just I didn't have a Blu-ray player. I have a bunch of Blu-rays and DVDs from the past, however long decades, but I didn't have a Blu-ray player. I was finally if I'm going to watch the Mission Impossible movies, get them on Blu-ray. get a Blu-ray player. I'll be able to watch all my other movies. But my dad, I've been watching it with my parents because they live close by, and we'll go see them when they come. The new one comes out. My dad was like, "Well, I'd rather watch it at my house because I can sit in my chair. It's better for my back." But they don't have a Blu-ray player, which is funny because I'm sure they have Blu-rays in their house somewhere. And so he's just like, "Oh, we'll just buy it to rent it." And I was kind of just like, I mean, okay. I mean, I already bought it. If you could come here, but if you don't, if it hurts your back, fine. Or I could bring my Blu-ray player, maybe. I don't know. But I just was just laughing. Like, I mean, I just bought it. You don't have to buy it all over again just for a night. But whatever. Um, the Mission Impossible movies are great. I think anyone who's watched them would say that they're all enjoyable, and it's fun to revisit them. And again, the second one is the worst of the bunch. It's
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I don't know if you've watched the second one. It's
So hang on, because we're gonna get there. I'd actually planned for this.
okay. All right. Well, I'll just say that yeah, next this upcoming week, I'll watch the sixth one with folks, and then the new seventh one will be coming out here in mid July. I think the 17th or something like that, and then we'll have caught up in time for the new movie. So,
Okay.
how about you? What's up with you?
So my week has been filled with basically me trying to like finish things. I've been reading obviously the fourth book in the Expanse series. It's getting pretty interesting, you know. Uh, Not going to go into a whole bunch of that because we're going to obviously talk about that when we do a After Dark series. But really have been enjoying this new book, and I guess now that we've moved things kind of away from Earth and Mars and the belt, and we're now dealing more with protomolecule stuff. That has always been kind of the more interesting part of the Expanse to me.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I like the more the otherness, the alienness of it. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to learn more about it. I always felt like even on the show we just didn't get enough of that. So I'm glad that the book gives me more.
Right.
In addition to that, I finished the show Tulsa King, which is also on Paramount Plus, which
Oh.
is the Sylvester Stallone show. He's the mafioso who went to jail for 25 years, and then he gets out, and he's really been kind of like expecting his due, his reward for staying in jail for so long, and they've kind of like given him the shaft a bit, and now he's having to like rebuild himself and kind of get back the life that he feels like he was owed and subsequently denied. But he's
Right.
also older. He's playing a 70 something year old ex mafia guy.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's definitely interesting to watch. And there's elements of it which it makes you wonder, like, is this supposed to be comedy or is this supposed to be like hardcore? They've definitely in the final episodes did lean definitely way more into the hardcore stuff than before. But when the first episodes when I was watching those, um, lots of great comedic moments in it. So I mean, I think the thing you have to work through the most to really get to enjoying the show is Sylvester Stallone himself. Um, he, he's obviously had some things that have happened to him over his life, so the way that he speaks is a little bit
Kind of
hard
talks out of the bottom of his
sometimes.
mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard sometimes to understand it, but once you like just kind of let it work for you, you can get past that, and it's actually a pretty good show. I think it's very entertaining. I've been surprised at how much I've enjoyed each episode.
Okay.
So yeah, I would just say check it out. It does get a bit violent, so don't be surprised. But but yeah, it's I really enjoyed it, and I when I finished it, I was like, okay, I'm ready for season two. If it has a season two, I don't see why it wouldn't.
Right.
But yeah, it's actually a pretty good show. Then of course I've been trying to make my way through Justified, mainly because I'd always liked the show when it had originally aired years ago. I
Right.
never finished it for whatever particular reason, not really sure what was going on with me then. But I've been trying to finish it now, mainly because they brought the show back. So it's been off the air for, I think, 10 or 12 years, maybe even a little bit longer than that. But they brought the show back, and it features, the titular character, Raylan Givens, and his daughter. And, he's kind of like in this other phase of life and still trying to do things. But since that they just released the first season of that. In fact, the first season hasn't even fully aired yet, and I want to watch it, but
You want to
from
catch
my
up first.
understanding, right? Well, from my understanding, you need to have watched the show in order to understand the next chapter that they're doing. So I'm
Right.
trying to make my way through that, and I'm almost there, and then I'll be ready to start the new show. So I'm
Right.
looking forward to that as well.
Right. Okay.
And then also because of Mission Impossible, I the new movie coming out and everything, I was realizing it's been a really long time since I've seen any of the Mission Impossible movies. And so I pulled them all up and I started reading like brief synopsis of each one. And I realized beyond the first one, I've never seen any of the other movies. Never.
Really?
Never seen
Oh,
them.
okay. All right.
So and even then I was like, I don't even really remember the first one. I remember the fanfare behind the first one. I remember
Yeah.
the excitement and all this stuff behind the first one, but I didn't even really remember the plot of the first one. So last night, because in true fashion, I couldn't sleep for whatever particular reason. So I just said, you know what, we're gonna go ahead. We'll watch the first one, and I will admit, it's entirely possible that I remembered more of the movie than even I thought. But it's again, the movie came out in 1996, so a long time ago.
Right.
Um, But in watching the movie, certain things were so blatantly obvious to me. I was like, how was this such a shocker reveal, whatever? And I was like, maybe my brain is playing tricks on me and I'm remembering the movie and not realizing I'm remembering the movie. Because so many things, like I was watching it, and there's like, even the one of the main scenes in the beginning of the movie, they're in Prague and they're in like somebody's, I don't know, house or museum or whatever it is that they're in,
Right.
and it's like an elaborate dinner party basically.
Right.
And I couldn't help but notice all the people who were watching them. And then it turns out that those people were in on some of the stuff that was going on, and he points them out later on. And then I was watching the movie and I was like, how much of this movie relies on people just not being observant of things? Like
The
there are so
characters
many
in the movie not
the
noticing things.
characters themselves and other people around them who are part of the plot just not noticing certain things. And I was like, are people just that clueless? Like, are you that oblivious to the world around you? You are so focused on yourself and whatever else that is just for you going on that you don't
Right.
notice the other things that are going on. Like that's what I kept picking up every time I was like, as I was going through the movie, and at certain scenes, I was just like, noticing the things like kind of, I guess, around the periphery of things that were going on. And then they referred to them later on in the movie and stuff. And I was like, how did no one notice this? And like the scene, the infamous scene, where he's on the wire and drops down in the building, and then the guy pulls him up and all that other kind of stuff, right? Where there's a part of that scene where he is dangling above the guy
Right.
the guy is in the room, right?
Yeah.
And when he walks in and the alarms and the sensory system is shut off, the floor is polished to a shine.
Right.
And he's in the room and he's looking down and he's moving. And I was like, you don't notice that guy hanging there?
Exactly. Come on,
Like, how
Four
did you
Eyes, just
not?
look up a bit.
Right. Like, look up just a little bit. And even if you don't look up, the floor is like glass. Like, it's crystal. I can see the reflection from the camera's angle that they're filming this. How did you not notice that guy right there and go, what is that? And look up and see.
Right.
So, like, there's just so much of that I was just in awe of the movie. And then
Yeah. There are some logical leaps you have to take to kind of get in it. Yeah.
there are a lot. And then and the one I thought also was a dead giveaway was John Voight's character, in the movie in the early scene.
Spoiler.
He gets shot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Spoiler. 1996 movie. Spoiler
Just saying.
alert. Yeah. Spoiler alert. He gets shot. And I have to admit, yes. Well, I have to admit, in that scene where he gets shot, I was like, he did it. Like, and again, I will admit that it's entirely possible. I watched this movie years ago and I was just remembering things or whatever, but I swear that in that scene where it's like the camera is showing him getting shot, you can clearly see the arching of the arm and tell that it's his own arm doing the shooting.
That gun is being held at a strange angle. Yeah.
And it's not even, even if you don't necessarily notice the gun, you've got to notice the wrist and how cocked and bent it is. No
Right.
one's wrist looks like that when they're holding anything out, let alone whatever. So like the fact that it was angled back towards him was a dead giveaway in the scene. And I was like, yeah,
Right.
they didn't do that well. They should have definitely just had another actor stand there and do it to kind of sell it, and then do your explanation later on, which they eventually do.
I'll
But
just push back and say that you have to have that tease of that there's something wrong to make the
right,
twist work.
I
But I know what you're
totally,
saying. Yeah.
I get it. I totally understand,
As
and
a consummate watcher of movies and TV, you caught on quickly, and
yes, and so I watched it, and then I was like, okay, and I pulled up the rest of the movies and everything else, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I've seen any of the other ones. And then I like really sat and thought about it for a long time and reviewed what I like clips and stuff, like not on YouTube or anything like that, but just like the stills, the promo pictures for the
right.
other movies. And I have not seen any of the other
Okay.
Mission Impossible movies. So I'm going to watch the rest of them in prep for the one that comes out July 12th. Now,
Gotcha.
as I said, like I did want to talk about this movie, but this was also going to be a part of our 90s segment since we haven't done a 90s segment in a long time.
Okay.
The episode that we're getting ready to talk about, Return to Grace, was filmed in 1996. This movie, or Mission Impossible, came out in 1996. It was a part of that kind of golden era heyday of movies. Back when we did the blockbusters.
Right.
Which I found out today. Do you know why they call them blockbusters?
No, I guess not.
Okay, so little brief movie history for you. The term blockbuster was originally taken from a military term for a type of bomb that was designed specifically to break up blocks. It was designed to be dropped and
On
destroy a whole block.
a
Right.
bunker, basically. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was big enough to take out a whole city block. That was the whole point of the bomb, right? So then, when movies were, then when they started doing more and more movies, it was designed. The movies were particularly designed to be successes. They had all of these boxes that had to be ticked off in order to be deemed a mainstream movie or an event. And then
Right.
because of the way that they were designed to attract people, they were called blockbuster events because
Gotcha.
that was the whole point, was to bring in the block.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. Gotcha.
So yeah, it was interesting to read about that too. But anyway, in 1996, this was kind of like the heyday of films. Top 5 grossing films of 1996 around this time were Independence Day, which came out on July 3rd of 1996, Twister, which was the May 10th movie, Mission Impossible came out May 22nd, The Rock with Nick Cage and
Sean
Sean
Connery.
Connery
Yeah.
was June 7th, and then out of all the action films, then the fifth film, The Nutty Professor, June 28th, came out June 28th. So
Eddie
you've got all
Murphy.
these, yes, you got all these action packed, big explosion, fanfare, movies and everything else, and then you have this comedy,
Comedy. Yeah.
The Nutty Professor. So interesting lineup of movies, but yeah, those were the top 5 grossing films at the time, and I was surprised to learn that Mission Impossible was third to Twister. I enjoyed Twister. I do remember watching Twister as a kid and
Right. It
really
was a
enjoying that
phenomenon in
movie.
its day.
It
Yeah.
really was. It was that was the Helen Hunt and Bill
Uh,
Paxton, I
yes,
believe,
that's right.
was in the
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
and also Philip Seymour Hoffman was in that movie,
Is he? Man.
and
Okay.
yeah, he's one of the storm chasers that is in there. Um, but yeah, great film about a natural disaster and flying cows. But yeah,
Right.
and then of course, I honestly understood why Independence Day was number one. That movie was fantastic. I mean, you got Will Smith, Jeff
Welcome to Earth.
Goldblum, Bill Pullman. Yes, I mean you've got great cast, great epic one-liners. You've got great special effects, and then quite possibly the greatest motivational speech of all time delivered by
This
the
is
president at
hard.
that time.
Yeah.
Yes, and that movie also had Mary McDonnell, Laura Roslin herself was in that movie. briefly. She
Man.
was the president's. She was the
Oh,
president's wife who dies.
oh, right. Okay. Man, I haven't watched that movie in a long time, so I'll have to rewatch it.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I was saying the same thing. I was like, I need to rewatch that movie just mainly to get to that part of the speech. It's such a great speech.
Yeah.
Um, I'll
Hey,
enjoy that for
boys,
sure.
I'm
Um,
back.
Randy Quaid. How could we forget that guy? Yeah,
Yeah. Did you see the sequel that came out with like 5 or so years ago, Independence Day 2?
I didn't. I have
Oh
not
man,
seen it.
you don't
I
you
have
don't
not
have
seen it.
to. They don't have Will Smith in it, so
I knew
like
that Will Smith wasn't in it, and I wasn't sure why he wasn't in it. I
because
don't
he was
remember.
smart and knew the plot was going to be terrible.
I mean, I feel like the movie probably could have been better if he was in it.
Oh, I
You
mean, it
know.
would have been a success if he'd been in it. Just he alone would have made it a draw. But
Okay,
I
so
saw it. I don't remember much other than like it turns out the first ship was not the main ship or something. Like there's the mothership truly comes and arrives in the second one or something.
uh, I mean, I
But
remember that
anyway,
being kind of the plot of the first one was we thought they first thought they took out the mothership, but then that big thing was the real big one was out there by the moon or whatever, and they had to fly up and blow it up. So now you're saying that wasn't even it. There's another one. There's another.
there's something where like the queen alien at some point pops up. Like she's bigger than the rest of them, and she does damage to something.
Oh,
So I don't remember the plot. All I remember is that it was bland. Will Smith wasn't in it. Um,
okay.
so, but
Well, I may check it out. You know, as my fascination with the '90s continues.
okay.
Um, yeah, and
Real,
then on the. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say with the Mission Impossible, the second one. I don't want you to get me wrong. Like watch them all, but just know that if you're like the second one is meh, it's okay. The second one is meh,
Okay.
and then they get good again for the third one and on.
Okay.
John Woo is the director of the second one because the
Mm-hmm.
first 5 movies, part of what was fun about them is they had a different director and writer each time. And then when it got to the fifth one, he likes that director whose name I can't remember at the moment. And so he had him help him do 6, and they're doing 7 and 8. Apparently, the seventh one is going to tie into the eighth one. They're part 1, part 2.
Right.
So the first 4 movies are fun because you're basically just getting a standalone movie with kind of some tie-ins with characters from previous films, but very little else connecting them. And then the later ones, they actually start having a plot that is apparently tied together moving forward. But the second one, let me put it this way: the second one is silly, whereas the other movies don't get silly. The second one gets silly, and that is unfortunately a detracts from it because the movies are fun when they're not being silly as much as they're just being high octane action. But definitely should watch it. You should definitely watch it just so I can hear your opinion and what you think, and then yeah,
Oh yeah. Well, that's coming. That's
yeah,
definitely coming. So don't worry about that.
yeah.
I did find it interesting to watch the movies and again all the '90s era tech and how they viewed spy stuff. You know,
Yeah.
DOS systems everywhere. The infamous the spy list on a floppy disk being
Yes.
shuffled around back and forth.
Yeah.
There, everybody's smoking. The use of these rudimentary cell phones and payphones were still a thing.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
can't get a good signal in this tunnel.
right. So many things that were dependent upon this, and I was just like, all of those things just don't exist anymore. It's like, show this to a kid who was born in,
2000 or later.
2000 or later,
Yeah.
right? None of it will make sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely none of it makes
Yeah.
sense. So,
Exactly.
yeah, um, great, great stuff.
Oh, by the way, one of the fun things that seems to be coming true about this new movie coming out is one of the FMI or the IMF guy who's chasing Ethan Hunt in the first film. He's back for the new one.
Kittredge?
Yes, he's back. It's been
Oh,
6 movies since we last saw him, but he's the villain. It looks like in the new one.
well, he plays an asshole very well.
He did.
As soon as I heard his voice, I was like, I don't know what his name is, but I know when I see his face
You're
that
right.
I'm not gonna
Kittredge.
like him. And
Yeah.
then when they showed his face, I was like, I knew. I was like, it's this guy. I've seen him in so many things, and I was like, you play bastard so well. Like there were so many movies in the '90s where he was just such an overwhelmed. He was just like a dick all the
Yeah.
time. and I was like, you know what? It's something about your face and your voice
Yeah.
that they have nailed it with you, and you have played that character so well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I hope we're not commenting on your personal life by saying any of that. You're
I really hope.
ridiculous.
All I'm saying is you're a phenomenal actor to be a
Yeah,
bad guy.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's
Exactly,
it.
exactly. Yeah,
You should actually absolutely see it as a credit. You have sold the character so well
right,
that when I see him, I just instinctively know I want to punch you. There you
right.
go. That's all I can say.
Exactly. The
All
one
right.
thing I wanted to do after Mission Impossible, I've probably already mentioned this, but I want the new Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan movie. Oppenheimer is coming out sometime after Mission Impossible. I forget exactly when, but I want to. I love Christopher Nolan. He's my favorite director. I want to marathon all of his movies, like
Oh man.
one movie a night up until the new one comes out. I don't know if I'll be able to manage it, but that's my intention. I liked
Okay.
Tenet. That was his most recent film. I know some people didn't like it as much, but if you take the time to like explore, like if you go on YouTube and look up people explaining what happens in Tenet, you can really get an appreciation for how smart the movie is. It's unfortunate that you have to like go elsewhere to like get some of the like, oh, that's so cool. But if
Yeah.
you do that, you'll really appreciate the movie a lot. And anyway, that's going
No,
to be my next
I
couple weeks.
Yeah, I feel like that's actually, a really great selling point for a lot of different TV shows and movies. Like sometimes it takes the perspective of other people in order to get you to really appreciate what you've watched or
Right.
watched a long time ago, whatever it is. And I feel like that's what we do with our show. I feel like, for
Yeah.
even people who have seen Deep Space Nine, you might not have thought about or considered certain things until you hear somebody else talking about them. And so I
Right.
hope that we can do that for people as well.
Right.
To that end, switching gears, since we're not here to
Finally.
talk about right all of this other stuff, man, I hope you guys enjoyed as much of that as I did going
Yeah.
through it, and don't get mad at us too terribly. But we are here to talk about Return to Grace, and this episode featuring Gul Dukat. The first time we've seen him in a while. Last time we really got to see him interacting with anybody, it was still also Kira, and it was about Zial, and he was going to go and try and kill her. And
Right.
now he had decided to, not. And so now we're seeing the kind of the fallout, not only the fallout from that decision, but also kind of where things stand with Cardassia
Yes.
and the Klingon military movement in general, and kind of seeing the evolving face of the quadrant as
Right.
we're looking at the Klingon war machines in full go. The Cardassians are still trying to recover from all the wars and from the occupation and so forth, and all this other stuff that's going on in universe.
Right.
So yeah, again, perfect episode to realize there are a lot of things you have to pay attention to that are kind of like on the peripheral of everything else going on, to kind of get a sense of how everything else is working at the
Right.
time.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be an episode where if you don't know some of the backstory of what's leading up to this episode, you're
Yes,
going to be missing out a bit, which is
and this is
unfortunate
yeah.
as an episode goes, but also means that it ties into the larger story, which is good. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And this is kind of leading into that whole point of why DS9 is, to me, such a better show than some of the other Treks that we have, because it does really depend upon, and I mean, really depend upon you having watched certain things that came before it. Next Generation was very episodic. I mean, we got the occasional two-parter, episode or whatever, but for the most part, they stayed away from direct references to previous episodes.
Right.
The characters were kind of they showed growth, but it was on a much broader scale. We didn't
Right.
get to see kind of the minutia that led them from point A to B to so forth. Deep
Yeah.
Space Nine did not do that. They definitely embraced serialization, and
Yeah.
this episode really highlights that. And they
Yeah.
do it for everybody, including our villains, which is what we see
Yeah.
here with Dukat. So,
Right.
if you don't mind, I will go ahead and do the summation on this episode since we're kind of behind schedule a little bit on our time.
Go
And that's
ahead.
one
Go
of
ahead.
those catch up. So as I said, this episode is kind of the follow up to when Dukat was trying to kill his daughter. He had decided not to kill her and to embrace her and take her home. When he took her back to Cardassia, as we know from what we've seen of Cardassians in general, there is a societal status symbol that your family can give you,
Right.
and having your family kind of, definitely very as a cohesive unit is more reputable than not. And so the
Right.
fact that he had this indiscretion and had a child, not only did he have a child outside of his marriage, but he also had a child with, the enemy at that time,
A
a
Bajoran.
Bajoran woman. That it was enough to completely tarnished the star that is Dukat. And he's gone from this impressive military leader and advisor to now he is the captain of a freighter, and a lowly freighter at that. The weapon system sucks. His crew is kind of subpar, and he's just kind of he's not kind of, but he's definitely on the outs.
Right.
So Kira has been asked by her boyfriend, the first minister of Bajor, Shakar, to go to Cardassia to this meeting with Cardassian diplomats and Bajoran diplomats to kind of update them on the state of things and certain technologies and things like that that have been shared in their attempt to combat the Klingons. Because
Right.
as we can also recall from Worf joining in season 4, the Klingons are on the warpath. They had seen Cardassia as kind of a threat and wanted to eliminate that threat. So they had mustered a huge fleet to go out and stop them. And then Worf and company kind of intervened and saved some members of the Cardassian High Council and so forth,
Including Dukat, for the record. But
including
yeah.
Dukat. Yes. So again, a lot of follow up here from a lot of things that have occurred already just in season 4. So again, Dukat took his daughter Zial back to the homeworld. They didn't really appreciate that much. He was ostracized. He was put on this freighter. He's brought Zial with him. Now they're having this meeting with all these diplomats, Cardassian, Bajoran, and so forth. Kira is going along to update them, and Dukat has been assigned as the captain of the ship Grimal to ferry her to the meeting. They head out to the meeting, and also, side note, we learn that because of all this fighting and everything else that's going on with Cardassia, the system is kind of in ruins a bit. They're suffering from widespread multiple epidemics. People are suffering from a lot of different diseases and so forth. We see Kira getting inoculation after inoculation by Bashir in the early parts of the episode because disease has now become so rampant. So basically, Cardassian society is kind of on the fringes or the beginnings of falling apart, and they're
Right.
trying to save themselves.
Right.
So Dukat arrives with uh, Kira to the location of the meeting, only to find out that the meeting place has been destroyed. The buildings, everything has been destroyed. Everybody's dead. Turns out there was a Klingon bird of prey that was cloaked, kind of waiting in silence here to ambush the next ship that comes through, which happens to be them. And the ship then decides not to attack them because they're a lowly Cardassian freighter and decides to pass them by. Dukat can't handle the insult. He tries to fire on them, but again, his weapons are subpar. He does no damage. The ship leaves. He's upset by this. Kira kind of, is beginning to understand. And I think it's also it's important to note that Dukat's kind of been hitting on her the whole time that they've been on the ship, which is weird. It's real weird.
We'll get
And
into that a
yeah,
little
we
more.
will. Yeah, we will. Definitely will. So it's weird. And like in an odd way, Ziao's like trying to help him, I guess. Like she's all, my father's not the man that you think he is, trying to get Kira to soften to him a little bit, I guess. So anyway,
Right.
Kira comes up with the idea to beam up one of the planet defense phaser cannons that was on the planet where they were going to go have this meeting and install it on the ship. Dukat's kind of against it, but eventually he decides to go ahead with Kira's plan. They mount the thing to the ship, and then they go off to find the Klingon ship that had attacked the meeting place. They eventually find the ship. They do attack the ship. They damage the ship, but they get their own damage in return. And so they come up with this plan basically to have the crews swap ships. The Klingons get beamed aboard the Cardassian freighter and vice versa. Now Dukat is in command of a Klingon bird of prey, a much more powerful vessel than what he had before. Plus, it's filled with all this intel and stuff. He destroys the Cardassian freighter, killing the Klingons that were on board. This kind of also weirds Kira out a little bit. But then they're
Yeah.
talking about all the intel, things like that they have found on the Klingon ship. Dukat is very happy. He's very excited. He feels like this is going to be the ticket to getting him back to his status that he had before. He informs the Cardassian High Council about the information he's found. And much to his dismay, they tell him, we're not interested in fighting. We want to seek a peaceful solution. So don't do anything. Come home and you can be a military advisor again. Kind of feeling defeated himself, he gets really upset. He's like, I don't want to do peace. I want to fight. I want to take back what we had. I want us to be a strong power again. And he decides, screw that. I'm not going home. I'm going to use this ship to kind of stage my own resistance against the Klingons. He pleads with Kira to come with him. He feels like he's being very convincing. I feel like he's being very creepy, but we'll get into that later. Yeah. She ultimately says no, but does agree to do him a favor by taking Ziyal with her to the station where she can live. Basically saying, I see the road that you're going down. I don't want that for Ziyal. I've lived that life. It was a hard life. I know you don't want that for your daughter. Let me take her. I'll look out for her while you go and do this thing.
Right.
He agrees. She goes to the station. And now Ziyal is living on Deep Space Nine while Dukat is off on his stolen Klingon bird of prey doing raids and stuff, I guess, being a resistance fighter.
Right.
So, yeah, that's essentially the episode. And as we've said already, we're going to get into it. But I feel like that's the highlights. That's the important stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to go and say it now that you've done the recap. I feel this episode suffered by not having a B plot. I feel like our A plot was just not quite enough to fill the time we had. And so they had to work a bit more than a bit extra to make this plot line feel full, and it's only full by I'd say 3/4, 4/5. It's not maybe
Almost
quite enough for a B plot, but it's also not quite enough to fill in the time we have. Because when you think about it, it's a fairly simple plot. We're on a freighter. It's not very powerful. They have to upgrade the ship in order to make it powerful enough. In the ability to upgrade it, they're able to take on a bird of prey, which is yet still not enough to kill it and destroy it, but they're able to commandeer it. And then Gul Dukat is going to keep it and make himself a thorn in the Klingon side. That's the basic gist of the episode. The stuff with Kira and Dukat and Kiral or whatever her name is part of it. But the reason part of the reason this episode required a B plot is I don't think Sisko appeared at all. Correct me if I'm wrong, which is crazy. I don't think Sisko appeared. I know Quark didn't appear. I don't think O'Brien appeared.
Yes,
Bashir,
they all did. No, they were all there at the very end. O'Brien, Sisko, and Dax are all seen at the very end when the commandeered bird of prey decloaks to drop Kira off.
Yes,
they're all there in opposite. But again, that's that's not even a full minute scene. They're there just to say, hey, they're back and they've got a Klingon bird of prey and we now know this.
That's right. Okay, so every single character except Quark had a minor part. Bashir's giving the inoculations. Dax shows up and he says, aren't you glad you're not going? Odo is there at the end.
That was Worf.
Oh, was it Worf who was there? Okay.
Worf comes into the infirmary, so it's Worf, Bashir, and Kira.
That's okay.
They kind of finish out that first scene.
Yeah.
And then we see Dax, O'Brien, and Sisko together
in Ops.
At the end scene in Ops. And then Odo greets Ziyal and Kira on the promenade. But yeah, the only characters that we don't see are Quark, Rom, Nog, and Jake.
Yeah. And Odo, by the way, is back to his normal self. No indication of previous episodes. He's feeling emotionally
inner turmoil with the love triangle.
Yeah, he's back to normal. He's like, "Hey, welcome back. You gotta stow away here with you." And he's like,
"So this is always one of the main points that I've brought up with Trek. We don't know how much time has truly passed between the last episode and the one we're watching. I mean, we always like to assume it's the next week, but you know what? There's absolutely no reason to think that it could be the next day. It could have been 12 hours from then. It could have been this could have been a month, right? It could have been a full month since the last time,
right?
And even when Kira is talking about her relationship with Shakar, we know it feels like there has been significant advancement in their relationship.
Enough that Gul Dukat has heard about it.
Right,
Yeah,
Dukat heard about it. He's well
and
aware of
complaining about it.
Shakar.
That's
Right.
what's weird about it.
Yeah. So yeah, we
Darn it,
know
Kira,
we
you like
yeah,
powerful men. Isn't it too
yeah.
bad that I've lost my powerful position? Like, what the
Right. He's
hell,
like
Dukat?
further further incentivizes me to get back all that I've lost. So now you're roundabout indicating that you clearly have a fixation on Kira. Weird. Weird. Um
Very, very
and
weird.
then it's just like he just kept at it, kept flirting with her, and she's always shooting him down and so forth. And to me, it was completely like it's both appropriate and inappropriate. And I say appropriate that in the sense that Dukat was just like oblivious to why she would object to him, and or no, it's inappropriate as to why he thinks that she would ever be interested in him, and her
Right,
reaction to him is completely appropriate. He
right,
was the oppressor. Just
right.
5, 6 short years ago,
Yes,
the resistance was still going, the occupation was still going. That's not near, and I mean, and there were generations of Bajoran suffering because of the Cardassians.
right,
5 years is not enough time to forget all of the brutality of one race against another.
right.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
And so yeah,
and Zial tries, as you mentioned, she's like trying to advocate on her father's behalf at points, saying like, "Yeah, when I see him, my father, I see him as a loving father. I don't see him as anything else." And Kira's like, "When I see him, I see a murderer. Like, I
right.
can't see past that." It's interesting. We should back up real quickly to say that Zial says that she loves her father and really appreciates him. He's been nothing but kind to her. He's never expressed any anger or regret about uh, bringing her back to Cardassia. And that's what Gul Dukat says to Kira. And so we understand this poor girl's position. You know, she was enslaved by an alien race for at least a decade, in this weird limbo state. You know, half a Cardassian, half a Bajoran. So she's not, really attached to either culture. Um, we feel for her, and we feel for her being pleased that her father is, having a relationship with her. But yeah, Kira's right to be like, look, I am doing my best to just like go along with how things are going. Like, I'm not straight up objecting. You know, I've had to deal with Gul Dukat multiple times since the rebellion, but like she doesn't explicitly say it. I mean, I guess she kind of does, but like his romantic attachment to her that's been burgeoning is just, I mean, what kind of hubris does Gul Dukat have to think that she would be interested in him at all? Like, it's like because he had a Bajoran mistress, like he has a fetish for Bajorans, and so Kira being the one that he knows, like she's in front of him, is what I'm getting at. He likes her because she's the only Bajoran he has any relationship with, frankly. Um,
Right. You know,
yeah,
he's got this weird fixation on her. I never felt like his interest in her was genuine so much as it
yes,
was she was kind of the point person, the forward face of the new Bajoran provisional government.
right,
And I mean, it's not to say that she's not attractive or whatever, but I think he's just fixated on her as this kind of, she's got this interesting relationship with everything else that's going on. She's obviously the Federation liaison officer. She's got strong ties with the Bajoran government and the military and so forth. She's got strong ties with the religious sect part of Bajor. Now she's
right,
got her hooks in the political arena as well with the first minister and so forth.
right,
So I think he sees her as kind of like I said, a status symbol. We know that the appearance and status is very important to Cardassians, and I
right,
think that she represents something that once he's attained a certain level, that it's obvious that
right,
she should be with him and that she should be interested in him. He even talks about Shakar, and he's like, I can't understand what you see in that guy. He's a lumbering field hand. What could
right,
y'all possibly talk about?
right,
He's demeaning of, because that's his outward appreciation or his outward assessment of Shakar. He
right,
knows nothing of Shakar, even though they've kept he says they kept a file on him during the occupation and his resistance cell and everything else. But the things that they kept tabs on was not his military prowess, not the battles and campaigns or whatever that he won or lost or whatever it is, they were keeping tabs on who he was sleeping with in his resistance cell.
Right.
You know, he's like, you were the
Which
only one of his members, of his female members, that he didn't charm, is what
Which,
Dukat
yeah,
says.
Gul Dukat says that, but man, I don't believe a word he's saying at that moment. I don't doubt that Shakar slept with one or two or had some liaisons with some of his underlings. Let's say he did. But it really comes off as like Gul Dukat is really overplaying whatever this is. Like, yeah, he slept with every single woman he got get his hands on except you, and now he finally did. And it's like, Gul Dukat, that sounds a lot more like what you probably did, frankly. Let's be real.
Yeah,
Sounds like you're describing yourself, don't you think? And we just saw Shakar in the last episode describing his kind of shyness around Kira and his, like, I don't know how realistic it is. We only really just found that Shakar was interested in Kira, and then in the same episode they're starting a relationship. But Kira's response is perfect. She says, "I've known him for a long time. He knows exactly what to say to me, and you will never be able to get to the point where he does." Um,
hmm
so it really comes down to a question of: do you think that the show is making a mistake by having Gul Dukat interested in Kira, or is that just a character choice? And it's not that the show was wrong; it's just that the character is dumb to do it. What do you think? What do you think? Is it a show
I
mistake or a
think that
character
it's
mistake?
I, ultimately, I think that it is I'm going to say an interesting choice, because there are certain aspects of the show that work because of his interest in her. Like, remember the early episode that we watched where they had accidentally activated that old Cardassian protocol that locked down the station? And
Yes.
so, when Dukat arrives and he's able to maneuver around the station and so forth, he's posturing and he's flirting with Kira. And
Right.
Garrick calls him out on it then. He's like,
Right.
she's never gonna be interested in you. And it was like kind of a shocking reveal that's what was going on, that the
Right.
posturing was for Kira's benefit. And so I like that they have kept that consistent, that he's never really deviated from expressing this interest in her.
Right.
Um, the reason why I think it's an interesting choice too is uh, I like seeing how Kira uses it to really kind of, boost her own character a bit. She's very confrontational and hostile with
Right.
Dukat, and she's just like, we're never going to be friends. We are never going to be like this. Professional, us conducting business is the closest that we're ever going to be.
Right.
Stop trying to make it more than that. And
Right.
I think it's interesting that she does it with him, because we have seen her be very friendly and even forgiving of other Cardassians in the past. She did it with Tekeni Gamor when he was doing his when they had her, looking like a Cardassian, trying to
That's
make
right.
him
The
think that
high
she was his
command
daughter.
guy. Yeah.
Right. And then with the other guy in Duet who he was a Cardassian who had surgically altered his face to look like this
That
other
particular.
Cardassian, the infamous Butcher of Galatet.
Right. That was season one, like the end of
That
season
was
one.
season one, the
Yeah.
episode Duet. Still a great episode. Go back and watch it.
Yeah, he was
Um,
feeling guilty for his participation in the massacre, and so he wanted justice to be done not only to the general, so he pretended to be the general, but also to Cardassian society. He wanted the Cardassian society to be
to acknowledge
shamed.
what they had done and be properly
Right,
shamed for what they'd done. And she was very forgiving of him for
right,
basically for his attempts to make his people recognize that what they had done was wrong.
right,
And so, yeah, she was forgiving of those two individuals. But
right,
now, and so then again, it just goes to show you why she could never accept and move beyond anything other than that kind of that tense professionalism that she has with Dukat, because
right,
Dukat doesn't see that he's done anything wrong. He
right,
was a military leader. He was doing his job. He did his
right.
job well, and that's how he views himself.
Well, and then
So
in this episode, he starts feigning like he thought the invasion of Bajor was a mistake. Like he
now,
thought
did he say that? No,
he said,
he did
yeah,
not say that. Zial said
oh,
he said
that's
that.
right. That's
We
right.
don't know
Yes.
that he actually said that. And
Right.
also, and if he did say, let's just take what Zial said on Facebook. If he did say that, I fully believe that he said that for her benefit, not
Yes.
because he truly believed it.
Right.
He's very interested in. It seems like whomever is in the room with him, he
Right.
wants to present a certain persona, right?
Especially
And
his
so
own
with
daughter. Like your
yeah,
Kardashian,
with
or sorry, your
her,
Bajoran mother. I loved her. Or
yes, I
I.
loved her. I didn't take advantage of her. I didn't rape her. No, we were in love. We were going to be
Right.
married. This was going to be, which is hilarious if you
I
think
was
about it,
gonna
because he's
bring
like,
about a new era with you as
right,
proof of our love. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
right. Because it's like, okay, but you had a wife and 7 children back on Cardassia that clearly are very important to you and your whole status and whatever else. So you weren't going to marry this woman and live with her and your illegitimate daughter and all that. You weren't going to leave
Yeah.
the role that you have built up for yourself. He was
Right.
Legate Dukat for a while there. There's no way he was going to walk away from that kind of power and prestige for this Bajoran woman and her half breed daughter. That was never going to happen. But he
Right.
says those things now because I guess he has to. He's got no choice. And again, it makes me wonder why he didn't kill Zial the moment he was away from Kira and they were alone.
Right.
Which it makes me just wonder, like, what's his end game here? What's his fascination?
Hmm.
Because it seems like, did he do this because he legitimately loves Zial and came to care for her, or did he do it because he's got this kind of long con end game in which somehow him and Kira are together, and he
Yeah.
knows that would never happen if
Unless.
Zial died
Right.
mysteriously or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. She's somehow the bait to like make Kira like him. Yeah. That
Right.
definitely seems to be a long con version. Like, part of me has wondered if because who's Bashir's friend, Garrick. Garrick has always come off as the rival to Ducat, and part of me has
Yes.
thought that they were like spy bros together, but it's like, no, Gul Dukat has never been a spy bro. He's been a military bro. He's not as far thinking. This episode really brings it forward. It's Kira who comes with all of the like new plans, telling him like, if you're going to be a rebel, you have to give up your traditions, and he's like, but traditions are hard to give up. Like, he's protesting
Yeah.
Kira's
No.
advice. And yeah, Gul Dukat, yeah, definitely comes off more as a schemer, like not as smart as Garrick and his like ability to like lie and manipulate, or just be deceptive. But Gul Dukat definitely comes off as like a schemer in the sense of like he's trying for something, but he seems to be kind of bad at it.
I
he's
always took
I don't
I
know.
yeah,
Yeah,
no, I always took his rivalry with Duke with Garrick to be like you said. Garrick was the spy master, and Ducat is the military man. So I always took it as their rivalry stemmed from kind of what we see in our own government to a certain degree, with people who engage in covert ops want all things to be covert. Let them handle it. Let use a scalpel rather than a bomb to
right, or
to
a
do your
hammer.
thing.
Yeah,
Right. And then military personnel are like, no, we conduct our business out in the open. We do things. We have a protocol. We have a procedure. We have like that's their mindset. And I
right,
always felt like they clashed because it was just that kind of classic military versus that was their thing, and they've known each other for a long time. They probably started around the same time,
right,
so having your rival kind of rise in parallel to you all the
right,
time
right,
is probably what fueled a lot of their animosity. They were always yeah, always parallel, always right. No matter what, like even if one outdid the other one, it was temporary until the
right,
other one rose as well. And so
right,
having that kind of unfriendly rivalry going on for such a long time, I think that's why they also don't like each other. Plus,
right.
I'm sure they both tried to scheme and outmaneuver one another, crossed a couple of lines a few times, and really kind of got that bitterness fired up between them.
Right.
So yeah, so that's why I always took that as for them.
Yeah. Well, going back to the whole Kira relationship with Ducat, when he first shows up, he's all like, "Oh, I'm in charge of this freighter because I was demoted because I followed your advice and I let my daughter live." And she's like, "You regret that?" And he's like, "No, no, that was a great decision. I love my daughter, and I'm so glad I." It's like he keeps talking out both sides of his mouth to this episode,
Yeah.
and it's it gets to the point. The actor who plays Gul Dukat is
Mark
Mark
Alimo.
Alimo. Yeah, I feel like he was like. This is what I'm getting at with the like. I feel this episode required a B plot. I feel like having to do a lot of talking. As Dukat was having
Hmm.
to just talk a lot and get Kira to convince Kira of this, convince Kira of that. I can't wait to regain my military prowess so you'll be attracted to me. Let me tell you why your current man is terrible. Oh, my daughter, I can't tell you if I love her or hate her, if she's the thing I love and appreciate, or if she's the worst thing that ever happened to me. I can't tell you if I want this bird of prey or if I want my military status back. It's like Gul Dukat, I kind of wanted to shake him at some point. I felt like the character was just talking so much. I feel like that's why the episode would have been helped if it could have either. Basically, I wish it had toned down Gul Dukat and some of this A plot, fit in a B
Yeah.
plot somewhere, and help tone some of the stuff down. Because I felt like Mark Alimo. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like he was having to work extra hard at times.
Yeah.
Like he was a lot of the weight of making this episode work was on him. This is mainly an episode
Yeah.
about Gul Dukat as I think about
And
it.
that's what I was just gonna say. I was like, I agree with you that he had to do a lot of talking, a lot of explanation of things, because the episode is really about Gul Dukat here
Right,
and the complexity of the character, how he's changing. Because again, when we're first introduced to Gul Dukat and really Cardassians at large, they are the enemy.
yeah,
They are the enemy. They were the
right,
ones that were occupying Bajor for 50 years. That occupation has really just ended 6 months, 8 months ago, so forth. And even then, they're not really sure if they're gonna change their mind and come back. That's why the Federation was invited by Bajor, because
right,
even though the Cardassians left, the threat of them returning was still very real.
right,
So, much of what we're seeing here is kind of we're needing to shift how we perceive Dukat and by extension Cardassians.
right,
And again, since he was introduced to us as our villain to kind of introduce Cardassians to us, I
right,
think that's why they went with the choice of using him again to kind of help us begin to pivot on how we view Cardassians as well. And I can see what you're saying about there needing to be kind of like a B plot to at least let him not have to talk so much. Maybe if
right,
we'd gotten to see more things instead of having to listen to him
right,
explain everything to us, would have
right.
made it a bit easier. Because the
Yeah,
heavy lifting of all of the conversation, having to pay attention to everything that he's saying and
right,
finding out, and we're finding out the state of the Cardassian Union through him.
right.
So there's a lot of
Yes,
things here that we have to take based on what he says, and
right,
that can be kind of hard to do, especially when he's talking so much and he's also saying other things that we just don't agree with. And in
right,
my case, for example, the constant intermixing of this righteous anger at how far his people have fallen, mixed in
right.
with his pursuit of Kira,
Yeah,
made it very hard to kind of like get everything and be
yeah.
totally on his side, which I think is kind of the point. I don't think they want us to be on his side, at least not yet.
No,
I think
definitely.
they want
Yeah,
us to just be like, at the very least, he's a complicated character. There's something
right,
else going on here with him. We're
right,
watching an evolution of a character here, and
right,
it hasn't all been done yet, and it's not supposed to be because
right.
this is only
It's
season
we
4.
got story to tell. That's why I
Yeah,
was asking if you
exactly.
think it's a mistake on the character's part to going after Kira or the show's part. And I would have to say it's the character. Like, not the show isn't making a mistake to have Gul Dukat
Yeah.
be weird like this. They have to make sure they deliver on it. And so far, we haven't yet seen the end of the story, so we'll have to see how this
Hmm.
progresses. But yeah, I mean, part of the reason he's also being so weird and creepy is so often Kira is working. She has a tricorder out, like a Cardassian version, and she's doing something.
Bajoran. It's
Is it a
Bajoran.
Bajoran one? Okay, well,
Yeah.
they're on a Cardassian ship, so I thought it was a Cardassian version. But
Yeah.
anyway, and there's Gul Dukat over her shoulder, just talking and like, but
Endlessly
Shakar
talking.
ain't got nothing on me. It's like,
Right.
bro, like, come on now. You're not even like doing any hard work here on the ship. You're just standing around waiting for other people to get the work done. Come on now.
Right, you're yelling at your lackey over here, the Damar,
Yeah.
He's been doing everything. He's trained your daughter. He's showing her fighting techniques. He's fixing the ship. He's doing all this stuff. Meanwhile, you're over here hitting on the Bajoran lady who's got no interest in you.
Right.
Just shut up and fix the
Yeah.
ship so we
I
can move on.
I want to quickly say I thought his second in command at some point, because the camera kept going over to him, and near the end of the episode where his daughter says, "I need help in the engine room," and the second in command is like, "I'll go help." I could have sworn in that moment I was like, "Wait a minute, is he a changeling? Is he about to like
You know
perform
what?
some sort of weird like we destroyed the Cardassian Bajoran diplomatic mission and you'll never get us or something." I thought he was going to kidnap the daughter and that was going to like bring this episode to some weird climax or something. And then it turns out Gul Dukat comes out of the shadows and he's just been on the phone with the high command or whoever, and they're like, "Nope, we're not going to have
Yeah.
you attack anybody." Which is again, the Cardassian society and their military has fallen to the point where they're trying to do diplomatic relations with the Klingons. Like, of all the races other than the Vulcans, I'm sorry, the Romulans, I can't think that diplomatic attempts are going
And
to do you much
right.
good.
And again, the Klingons are the ones who initiated this war and started the conflict. And the Klingons are known for not really tolerating weakness. So do
Yes.
you think coming to them with a diplomatic solution is really going to work?
Right.
Probably not. So there are moments where what Dukat presents makes sense.
Right.
You got to respond with strength. You need to fight. You need to attack. You need to rout. Whatever. But the way that he positions all of it, just it's so it's jarring. We jump
Yeah.
back and forth so much
Right.
that it's a little hard to stomach at times.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like when Kira even calls him out on that one point when she's telling him, you're I'm trying to fix this and get everything up and running here because they killed not only my people but your people as well. You are so focused on Shakar and us dating and whatever else, you don't seem to care. And then he gives her this impassioned speech about those are my people and no one's going to take advantage of them and I love them and he does such a great job with it. But it's hard on the heels of him being like, so, I mean, Shakar, really? I mean, the guy's he's kind of a tool. Like, he's so simple. Like, yeah, it's just like, shut up. And
Yeah.
then, the last speech that he really gives, which I think was supposed to be like the one,
Right.
and that's where he's trying to convince Kira to come with him. And he's like,
Right.
I know that we'll never be, friends and all this stuff, but I'm not talking about that. This is the opportunity to be a soldier again. And I know that everything's telling you to say no, but I know somewhere in
There's a
there's a
yes.
yes. You
And I
need to
need to
listen to
listen to
that
it.
yes.
Yeah.
I was like, are you still talking about being a soldier? Because it almost sounds like you're talking about something else because you've done such a great job of bouncing back and forth that I'm just like, this could go either way.
Right.
And
Yeah, and then Kira
yeah,
later on, he's like, "So was I close to convincing you at all?" And she was like, "Not really."
nah,
That's where I
nah.
think again, it's not the show making a mistake; it's the character making a mistake.
Yeah.
Um, the show is smart enough to not let Kira really entertain any of this nonsense. She's like, "No, what the hell?"
So, and to that end, I will say for some behind the scenes information, there is a documentary called "What We Leave Behind" that's all about Star Trek: Deep Space Nine and all the stuff. How the actors have viewed their characters through the years and all the follow up and stuff that you can get about the show, right? And there is a section in this thing where Mark Alimo and Nana Visitor, Dukat and Kira, respectively, are talking about their characters and their particular interactions.
Right,
And Alimo blatantly says, absolutely, that Dukat wanted Kira.
right,
He wanted to sleep with her. He wanted to possess her. He wanted
right,
her to be his. And Kira talks about how, or, Nana talks about how she knew this. She was very much aware of this, and it creeped even her out. She was like, I
the
did
actress out
I
even, yeah,
the actress out. She's like, I didn't like it. I didn't want to be a part of it. She's like, I hoped that it never happened. She's
yeah,
like, I was concerned that there was gonna be a point where they were gonna make something happen. And I was
right,
glad that they didn't. And I
right,
and when I heard her say that, I was just like, I'm so relieved
yeah,
because if it somehow they had worked it around that Dukat
Yeah.
and Kira ended up together, I think that would have destroyed the show for me. I
Yeah.
just There's just no way, in my
Right.
opinion, that that could ever happen. She
Right.
may be able to to get to a point where Kira could not necessarily forgive Dukat, but be okay with him being around, I
Right.
guess.
She can put the past out of sight long enough to do what she has to do
Right.
and do it. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
But there's too much bad blood between her and him personally, plus their people and what they've lived through recently. I don't see a friendship for those types of individuals, people who lived through the occupation, who fought on the resistance for the occupation, or were a part of the military for the Cardassians who actively led campaigns against them. Those people, I just don't see them becoming friends,
Right.
let alone bed partners.
Well,
I don't see that happening.
as I think about it more, I think what it really comes down to is I feel like Gul Dukat really, it feels like what he wants is for Kira as a representative of the Bajorans, at least in his mind. If she were to submit to him, that would have proved to him in his mind that all Bajorans would submit to Cardassians in some capacity. They would admit the superiority of Cardassians. You don't
Mm-hmm.
like your Bajoran boyfriend. You like a Cardassian boyfriend. You want a Cardassian male, not a Bajoran male. And that's why his daughter is in this weird kind of spot in my mind of like, is that I'm curious to know how this Mistress Bajoran of his worked. I don't believe that he had a loving relationship with a Bajoran woman. She
I
might
don't
have
think
had
so.
to pretend it for her own sake, but it was coerced on
Yeah,
her end. And Gul Dukat doesn't get that. I think on some level he thinks that if a Bajoran woman, submits to him, it's out of some sexual prowess that he somehow possesses on behalf of all Cardassia. Like the Cardassians have
yeah.
something over Bajorans, and that's why it's just so creepy. It's not. He's
I
not.
would agree because because that also harkens us back to the episode Indiscretion where him and Kira were traveling to find the Ravenok, I believe was the name of that ship.
Right.
And he's even telling he was telling I remember him telling Kira in the shuttle, he's like, Bajor has a lot to be thankful for because
From
of
us.
Cardassia.
Yeah.
We made you when he said when we first encountered you, you were a backwards
Race and
people.
decline. Yeah. Race and
Yeah,
decline. Yeah.
you were slovenly, you were slow, you were whatever. You were deep in your religion, and then we came and we turned you into intelligent, hardened, militaristic, a professional kind of people, and you
Right.
wouldn't have that hard temperament to make it through anything if it wasn't for us. Like
Right.
he's even trying to spin the occupation as this kind of, you know,
Yeah.
Bajor needed to take its lumps in order to be a better
Yeah,
society.
it's the ridiculous assertion of you're a better person because you were abused. Your
Right.
abuser
Yeah.
made you better. Like, that is
We
not an
beat you.
excuse.
Yeah. Right. We beat you down. We subjugated your people. We took all of your resources. We enslaved half your population. We killed the other half. Uh, thanks. You're welcome. You
Yeah,
should be thanking us because now
right,
look at you. You're all free. You got your whole planet back.
right.
Yeah, I mean, look at how great you are. The Federation wants you. Like you wouldn't have any of those things if it wasn't
Yeah,
for us. Like
yeah,
that's kind of how he's spinning it,
yeah,
you know. So
yeah,
yeah, it's interesting the way that he tries to keep uh, putting himself in this kind of best possible light. And even with
yeah,
Carrie, he's just like, again, you wouldn't like with the whole dating of Shakar and everything else. Like again, his focus on Shakar is lumbering field hand. That's how he talks about him. He's a simplistic man. You, on the other hand, you're very sharp. You're very keen. You're
right.
very you've got this militaristic mind. Think of what you've done just in the short time you've been with us now. You've got this great innovative mind, and how could you want to be with somebody as slow and simplistic as Shakar when you could be with someone who is your equal at the very least, or your I'm so much better than he is.
Yeah,
I'm a soldier. I've got this, that's kind of how he's trying to present himself. And
right.
yeah, it's just like the
It's
attributes that you're highlighting, we only have because you brutalized us. Like that's
right.
not what we wanted.
Well, yeah, and he
Yeah.
uses he keeps calling her and Shakar terrorists. Y'all were
He does.
terrorists,
He
and he
openly
uses it.
refers to him, and he says it so harshly too. I
Yeah,
caught
it's
that a
like a
couple times and were like,
slur.
Jesus Christ, right?
Yeah, and then later on, when he's basically being told by Kira, like, yeah, you have to take on that role yourself in this fight against the Klingons. His initial reaction is one of like, but that's just not how we do things. And she's
Right.
like, okay, well, you need to learn how to do stuff. So yeah, it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah, it's yeah, he the back and forth, as much as there was a lot of oh yeah, than not, but it would have.
Yeah, yeah,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's just crackling a little bit.
All right.
It's good. It's back.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I can't hear you on my end.
I must
I
have
don't know what
muted
happened.
or something.
We're
But
almost
it's
done. We can wrap this
yeah.
up. But
I was gonna say it works for us more than not, but
yes,
at the same time, it would have been better had we seen more of these behind the scenes things that kind of got him here than what we actually get. So,
right,
um, I agree with you. We could have not necessarily needed a B plot, just a
right.
little bit more of the behind the scenes stuff and the struggles with the top of console. That's the Cardassian government and so forth. So.
Yeah, it would be good if we could see that. Though I understand why the show can't, or at least won't, show us that. To be fair to the show, like that is behind the scenes for a reason. We're focusing on the Deep Space Nine crew, but yeah,
Well, I think we've pretty much done everything that we need to for this episode,
true,
um, and then some.
right,
We didn't go over nearly as much as I thought we were going to, but I did want to just say really quick, we're in full go here with Strange New Worlds. Star Trek Prodigy, the cartoon show that was geared towards kids for Nickelodeon, has officially been pulled from Paramount Plus. You cannot watch it anywhere anymore. I don't know if it's going to end up on Nickelodeon, which I don't think that it will, considering that Paramount is a parent company for Nickelodeon. So if it was
are
going
they
to be
gonna do a
available,
tax write off with that? I know like Warner Brothers did that with the Batgirl
that's
movie or something.
that's what has been floated around, was that this was done as kind of a way to stem some kind of cash flow. I don't know how true that is. I haven't really looked into it. All I know is there's been a lot of stuff out about Prodigy and like how significant the show was.
Hmm.
And it apparently it had won several different awards. I wasn't aware of this. It just all came out recently. So the fact that it was canceled
Right.
is kind of like sticking with some people, because like it was actually more popular perhaps than anybody really realized.
Okay.
And the information I've been seeing so far is that because you had people who were fans of Star Trek, adults who were
Right.
glad to finally have a show that they could really watch with their kids. That
Right.
really hadn't happened since the original cartoon Star Trek show from the 70s.
Right.
So this is the first time that they had one that was geared towards kids. Because I mean, the other animated show, Lower Decks, is not geared towards children. It's just
Right.
not. Um,
Right.
and there were aspects of the first season of Prodigy that were definitely more kid friendly, but then as the show progressed, it was kind of aging things up a bit because it was moving along with kids as they age.
Right.
So
Uh-huh.
yeah, so to have that suddenly cut short has really kind of angered some people. So there is a massive campaign to get the show not only put back onto the Paramount streaming platform, but to also
Right.
continue it. I did check in on this particular petition. The petition went up the day after they removed it, which I think was like 3 or 4 days ago. Within
Right.
48 hours, it already had 200,000 signatures.
Oh wow.
So it's
Right.
it's quite popular and it
Star Trek
continues
has
to
a
go on.
history of this.
Yes, and that's the other thing too. Star Trek does have a history of petitions and write-ins saving shows. The original series would never have gotten the third season if it wasn't for it. Strange New Worlds
Right,
would not exist right now if it wasn't for the write-in campaign. So yeah, Star Trek
right,
fans, they know how to put together a petition, I guess. So who knows? Maybe it will work, and maybe Prodigy
right.
will continue for a third and maybe fourth season. Uh,
Just on that
Discover,
point, I just want to quickly say, I
yeah,
feel like there are a lot of shows that like you gotta give it a couple years to really give it a chance to earn its
yeah,
fan base. Like I don't know
yeah.
how what the science is behind that, but I feel like there's a number of things where it's a snowball effect. The first couple seasons
I
probably don't have
100%
the
agree.
viewership, but you
I
give it a
100%
shot, you
agree.
give it time, and you let it just build. Because like the Silo show I just finished watching, I didn't start watching till like episode 5 or something when my mom had mentioned it.
Not
She's like, "Yeah, we've been watching this show, we like it." I was like, "Oh, great!" And I saw a trailer, and I was like, "I want to watch that." So I wasn't there for the first couple episodes. I don't know. Yeah,
it. No, I 100% agree. I mean, heck, The Expanse was another show that was like that. It got canceled, and if it wasn't for the writing campaign, that show never would
yeah,
have continued on, and it
right,
and its fan base became much bigger afterwards. I mean, when you think about it, we've got so many different streaming platforms and ways to access shows and everything else. It's impossible for everybody to watch every single thing. It takes a
right,
while for things to kind of make the rounds, make the
right,
circuit. And it's
right,
often that you find shows well after they have been canceled and you
right,
watch them and you're like, this is wonderful. And then
right.
you go to look for season two and there is no season two.
Firefly.
Firefly is a prime, yes. I was going to say Firefly is a prime example of this.
One
It's
of
a
the
show
biggest
that
mistakes in all of TV history.
I'm sure that whoever was the CEO, exec, whatever of Fox at that time, I'm sure they've since retired or whatever else. But I
Yeah.
bet you there are still moments where they kick themselves. Where they're
Isn't
like, man,
Fox
because that show
notorious? At least there was a time where
Fox
Fox was
is
notorious for
notorious.
that.
Yes, Fox is notorious for greenlighting shows, giving them one season and then canceling them. It's if they're not an instant catch-on success, they don't want to have anything to do with the show anymore. And I don't understand that at all.
Right.
Like some shows, they just take a while. And I've noticed that other streaming platforms have kind of gotten into that. Netflix has gotten into this of they will do a show for like 3 seasons and then they cancel it. And it's just like, why did you cancel that show? It was just getting good. The fan base was there, and then people come back to the show, you
Right.
know. And now the show has been canceled. It's been off for 3 years, 6 years, or whatever. And that's got this huge fan base, this huge following, and everybody's like, "Well, why was it canceled?" And now they want to do a revival of the show, and the actors can't do it anymore because they've now moved on to other projects, and they're doing other stuff. And it's just like, why? Like
Yep.
give the shows a chance,
Yep.
you know. And one thing I would love to see is like we have this, and this goes back kind of to the movies, thing too. We have this history of like the blockbusters. We will do them forever. Like we're on Mission Impossible 7 and 8,
Right.
right? And we will keep doing them, and then we'll do reboots. Like how far away are we really from a Mission Impossible reboot of the
Right.
first movie, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, a new cast taking on the role of Ethan Hunt and so forth. I feel like
Right.
that's closer than we think.
Yeah.
But then there are a lot of movies that had a great premise, great plot, great story, but terrible director, lackluster performances from certain actors, and they came out, they flopped, and we never heard from them again. I
Right.
would love for somebody to go back and redo those movies. They
Right.
had great stories, they
Right.
just needed better execution. And
Right.
if they would do that, and it would be like a breath of fresh air, because they're movies that we've just kind of pretty much forgotten about,
Right.
you know. And no, unfortunately, I don't have any examples. I wish I did. Now that I've just said that, I wish I had some examples of some movies that would have been better, that would be better now,
Right.
than back
Well,
then. And
I
all I could think of only thing I would think of was anything that had like a lot of early CGI stuff where that
right.
technology wasn't quite sound yet, wasn't quite proven, but
Right.
was pivotal to the plot. Any
Right.
of those movies, I bet, would be better now than
Right.
when we did them in the early '90s.
Okay. I was just gonna say that when it comes to shows like The Expanse, for example, I think if Amazon had been public about, we're going to commit to the ninth season. Like we got it. Well, it was 3 seasons in. We're going to commit. Like there are 9 books. We'll commit to 9 seasons. And like they make that bold statement up front, and they pitch that to all of the people that might watch it, and that would just convince people like that's how invested we are in this storyline. So come see it. We're not gonna like hope it works, and then cancel it halfway through, and then like sorry. Like if you were to go out to the public and say we have a story we're so committed to telling, we're gonna do however many seasons. I mean, I feel like that's why Lord of the Rings was so successful. I know we're getting on a tangent at this point, but like they did
We're
the
good.
3 Lord of the Rings movies, they shot them back to back to back.
Right.
And
And they were massively successful, so much so that we have
exactly.
now expanded upon that universe ad nauseum. We're
Right.
we're doing things now that I mean, just like they're having to knock
There are
up.
more video games from Lord of the Rings than I care to
Yeah,
even count. I mean,
I mean, they're
goodness
having to knock
gracious.
up the ancestors of Tolkien and ask them for, can we get his notes, his old diaries, so we can
Yeah.
pull some of
Yeah.
this up because we've run out of source material.
All
They're
right.
they're
Yeah.
trying to expand this stuff so much. Like
Right.
that's how crazy, and that's all because they were committed to the original project. And heck, I hear that they are, going to do another Lord of the Rings series.
Well, they're doing
Um,
the Rings of Power. They did season 1. I
no,
guess it
I'm
was
talking about
last year.
what I thought they were going to redo the Lord of the Rings movies.
Are they?
I will
I heard
double
that.
check on that.
Huh.
But another
Maybe we
series
talked
that's
about
having
that
the
'cause that
same,
sounds like I've heard
yeah,
that. But,
yeah. But there's another series that's doing the same thing, and that's Harry Potter. They're getting
oh,
ready to redo the Harry Potter
oh,
series,
please stop! No,
but this time it's not going to be as movies. It's going to be as a TV show, HBO or Max. Max now, not
please
HBO
tell
Max,
me you
just
heard
Max.
this in a fever dream.
Nope,
You were
nope.
sick,
I'm
and you
sorry, I haven't been sick.
hallucinated,
I
and you
haven't been sick
remembered
in a
it
long
as.
time. Sorry, I haven't been sick in a long time. So no. But
Someone
no,
get this
you can.
man COVID and shut him up.
Um, but no, yeah, I heard that this is going to be a series for
I will go
the
to
Harry Potter
Hollywood
thing. Yeah,
myself and picket those damn lines with the rest of the Writers Guild. Did they ever work that out? I know it's Saturday and last night was supposed to be the deadline. I haven't heard anything.
I didn't hear anything, so I don't know.
I will
But
go
no,
picket myself and be like, never again. Stop it.
no,
Come
I
up
think
with
it's
new
coming.
content for crying out loud.
That's what I'm saying. We're so like everything has to be a success now. There's just the, no room for error on any of it. So this desire to keep remaking things instead of taking a chance on something new
Right,
is crazy to me. And I mean, and to bring it all the way back to Paramount, Paramount canceling Prodigy, canceling Discovery, kind of, you know, shortening down their or narrowing their focus to these few things here
right,
is a mistake in my
right,
opinion. You should be, and it's like again, you canceled Discovery, but you're keeping Halo. Why? Makes no sense. Halo is terrible. It is objectively terrible. Such a massive departure from the source material entirely, and
right,
for and yeah, for no reason.
right,
So yeah, but you're going to keep that show, and then this other show that was doing well, was getting better all the time, was really starting to find its footing, and I would not be surprised at all because this typically tends to be how it happens. But this fourth season of Discovery, I bet you it's amazing. I bet you it's a fantastic season, and we're gonna watch it and we're like, wow, this show is great. This is what we've been waiting on. I wish the show had been like this the whole time, and now they're finally here, and it's over. They did
right.
that with Enterprise.
I was gonna say
Enterprise
you told me
finally
that's what
figured
happened with
out, yes,
Enterprise. Yeah,
Enterprise finally figured out what it needed to be, and they canceled it. I wish they would stop doing that. Let
right,
things they need that commitment. Let them run,
right,
and it will be so much better.
right. Yeah, I mean, I know that it would be a risk to say we're going to give them carte blanche for 9 seasons, and
Right.
then they're like, we can do anything we want, we can't be canceled. I get it, but there are times, especially with a brand like Star Trek, or again with the Expanse, where you have the material already there. You don't have to commit to some unknown storyline. You have an idea of where you're going. you can say this is how far the story needs to go to be completed. We'll go there and at least get there. I don't
Yeah.
know, but
No, I
now
mean,
we've definitely gone over.
it's okay. But Star Trek has proven again and again that it is a show that is definitely, it needs longevity. It needs to have the full life. If you don't give it the full time to really kind of open up and grab the audience, then it's not going to be successful.
Right.
And now with the way that we do shows, we had the 22, 24, 26 episode seasons, and then that was 7 seasons of that. All that's gone now in favor of the 10 to 12 episode season.
Right.
Yes, there are going to be flops here. They don't have nearly as much time as they've got half. They've got
Right.
essentially half the time that the
Right.
other shows had to run to grab an audience. That means you need to give them more seasons. So yeah, just we can go on about this for quite a while. But all I'm
Right.
just saying is I just hopes that there comes a point where they kind of recognize their mistake. We stop green lighting the same thing over and over and over again, and we allow new things to go to
Right.
do the process.
Right.
Well, any final thoughts as we wrap up this longer episode of
Yeah.
the Fire Caves?
No, good talk. Good talk.
Yeah. Well, we will be back next week with yet another episode for you all. I'm not sure exactly which episode is that. Obviously,
That's a Worf one.
it's the Wharf one. The Sons of Moog, I believe, is what it's called.
That's it. Yep, that's
Um,
it.
so we'll be back with that. We'll also be, doing another After Dark soon, so that we can get caught up with the Expanse series and what's going on there, and some other stuff that
The
we're,
Dune Part 2 trailers have been coming
yes,
out, stuff like that.
yes,
Yep.
yes. And then there's a little project I've been working on for Star Trek fans in general, which will be on Facebook here really soon. So
Right.
I'll be excited to talk to you all about that. I haven't got all the final touches on that just yet. So just, bear with us, and we're going to cover all that for you as well. So
Right.
again, great things on the horizon for a lot of stuff. And if you're interested in just being a little bit more active in the Trek world, I'm going to
Right.
try my best to give you something new that you can do that with as well.
Right.
But until then, as always, you can listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. I happen to do it on Spotify, and you can find us and follow us on all the various social media platforms, except for Twitter, which apparently, according to the news, is going to implode like any day now. So we're not even going to worry about that anymore. But until next time, guys, take care of yourselves.
Thanks, guys.